So we're going to look in a little bit more depth around digital literacy, and for that, I'm going to turn it over to back to Adrian.
Thank you, Tracy. So I think the key message there is that Tracy's outlined to us is that there may well be national or district level competencies and standards that schools are working towards and driving towards. But making sure that your participants are aware of their individual needs and where they fit under those standards and competencies is really critical. And then helping you to gauge that need and plan workshops that are appropriate for a wide variety of people in a workshop is quite an essential skill. So each of the workshop materials in pil1eorig.com have what we're calling a needs analysis type aspect to them. So we're going to start with a very brief overview of level 100 digital literacy and how that has components that can help you if that's the level of educator that you're working with, if that's the level of course that you decide to build your program around, how you can use some of those resources to gauge the needs of your participants. So as Tracy mentioned at the start, digital literacy really is the foundation level of teacher competency in terms of technology integration into the learning process. It's not just about functional understanding of technology, but it's about the basic application of it. So maybe productivity tools for the teacher or simple uses of technology for the student. But it's really the foundational level. Many teachers perhaps have this already. Many of the people in your workshops perhaps have this already. But some of you are probably working at the level where this is the first and most appropriate starting point. So level 100 really is designed around the digital literacy curriculum that is online and available offline as well. And when we start to think about delivery models for any e-learning content, such as the digital literacy curriculum, it's worth thinking about how are you going to set up your workshop? What is the best way for you to use technology in delivering your workshops? And there's four really main ways that technology can be used to support e-learning. The first one is what is called e-supported. You can see the URL at the bottom of the slide to find out more information. The e-supported means that you have a fairly traditional workshop face-to-face scenario, and you use technology within that for sharing documentation or accessing resources, etc. A blended approach in an integrated fashion would be face-to-face workshops that have online components to them that may happen in the workshop or before or after the workshop. So it could be a series of 5 or 10 workshops that are supported by virtual universities or using SkyDrive to share resources or video links, etc. Blended learning in a concentrated fashion would be an intensive program. So rather than 10 weeks of a session a week, it would be a similar group of activities that bunch together in an accelerated fashion, for example, a summer camp for teachers to use technology. And then distance learning really is very traditional, no face-to-face component, all online, useful for remote communities or people who are in work and can't access face-to-face PD. So all those training models that you perhaps work in already have one essential requirement, and that is that you need to understand where your participants are at the beginning of your workshop, so you can tailor your activities to support them, hopefully on an individual basis, but certainly in groups. And in the digital literacy level 100, there are several resources that enable you to find out where your participants currently are. So if you remember, this is a screenshot from the pil1eorig.com toolkit. If you remember, in each of the workshop sections there, you have the core curriculum, in this case, digital literacy. If we were to click on that box and follow the links, we'd end up at an online website, Microsoft Digital Literacy Curriculum. And you can see that in this digital literacy curriculum, there are 5 basic modules: computer basics, the internet and the World Wide Web, etc., etc. Each of those modules has 2 components to it. One is the e-learning aspect, knowledge acquisition, so that the teacher would go onto the website and would go through a series of knowledge acquisition activities, and also an assessment. And the assessment can help you to understand where they are at the beginning of the course. It's kind of a diagnostic of their current abilities. And those 2 pieces are available online and offline. So you can either launch it as e-learning or you can download it as e-learning. And the assessment can be launched online, or it can be a Word document download. We're going to look at what the launch assessment would look like if you were running this or if it was being used by your participants. And they get a series of questions for them to think about. So here's a screen capture that says digital and video web technologies, and it's asking them to drag in the components of video streaming, web conferencing, video downloading, etc. Another example of a question they might be able to go through would be a multiple choice question. So, for example, which statement is correct about video streaming, and they choose the right answer at that point. They would go through a series of questions and get their responses along the way. Another question example there, another. And at the end, they'll get some kind of diagnosis of where they are currently. This is my score, 87%. I obviously got 13% wrong deliberately, otherwise I would have got 100%, of course. But they get an output that says, you have these abilities, and these are the courses that we suggest you perhaps need to work on or go through in a workshop. So if you had your participants to run through this, if you were doing a level 100 type workshop, and had your participants run through this online or offline before they come to your workshop, you'll have a clear idea of where their level of ability is and how to pitch your workshop planning. They can also print their own certificate as well, which made me very happy when I did that. And they'll get advised on what pieces of learning might be useful for them next. But bear in mind, the Microsoft Digital Literacy curriculum is not contextualized for education. It's a very generic course. It's about functional technology and isn't relevant necessarily to any specific professional space. So it's not going to help educators to understand how to apply the technology. It's really going to help them to just understand how much they know about using it in general terms. So what we've done in the toolkit, if you remember the screen where we had level 100 core curriculum on the left, and then we had consolidation activities, and then we had educator projects. For the consolidation activities, if you go and explore them, take what they will have done in the digital literacy curriculum and applies it to a set of activities that you can run in a workshop that are contextualized for educators. So there's a value-add piece to the digital literacy curriculum. So you could have your participants go through that first, bring their diagnosis to your workshops, or let you have that information in advance. And then you could use some of the consolidation activities or the educator projects, this is a screenshot of the educator projects, to add value to what they already know and build your workshop contents around it. So really the model there is that you have the core curriculum which has needs analysis, which enables you to find out the starting point for your participants. And then you can use the resources that are in consolidation activities and educator tutorials on pil1eorig.com to help you build a really personalized and appropriate workshop experience for each of your participants. Now, I know in an ideal world, everyone would have their own program, and that isn't always achievable, but certainly you can build something that is a bit more suitable for the majority of your participants if you have an understanding of where their starting points are. Likewise, in level 200, the teaching with technology content, we have a very similar set of resources. So I'm going to whiz through that slide because Tracy covered that already on this call. But in here, we have, again, the same three sections. This is pil1eorig.com again. This is a screenshot from the website you will have access to shortly. So teaching with technology curriculum is a core component. And again, we have consolidation activities and educator tutorials. If you follow the links on pil1eorig.com, you'll come to the Teaching with Technology curriculum, which is hosted on the Partners Learning Network. So you will need to register the Partners Learning Network to be able to access that. It's free, of course. And one of the things that you could do there, or have your participants do in advance of your workshop, is to take a self-assessment, which is built around the UNESCO framework that Tracy mentioned earlier, and enables your participants to go through a series of questions, up to 40 randomly generated questions, that help them to find out where they are already on those sections of the UNESCO competency framework. And again, it's an online component. They'll have a set of questions. Some of them are multiple choice, like this one. They're more contextualized to education. So this one, for example, talks about observation of pupils and thinking about activities that would help students to record their progress in their work. So the questions are for teachers rather than about technology. And they'll work through a series of questions. It's up to 40, I think, randomly generated questions. And at the end of that, they'll be given this learning plan. So this is a screen capture of what will appear online to them. And it tells them there already which areas of the course they perhaps need to focus on in order to improve their skills, where the gaps were perhaps in their competencies. So you can see from this one that I did that there's quite clearly a need for me to do some learning around using appropriate ICT instructional resources. Bottom left-hand ticks there. So if I was to follow those links, it would take me actually to a course that covers exactly what the gaps are in my competence. So here's an online course, again, on the Partners Learning Network that I'm able to access that will help me to work through evaluating ICT instructional resources, the very gaps that were apparent in my diagnosis when I did my self-assessment. So I can work through this online. It's blended e-learning, so the opportunity is there for you to have participants do this in your workshop or to do it prior to your workshop and then build on it in your face-to-face session. There's associated resources with each of the modules as well that they can download and open. For example, how-to guides. Show Me is a case study about how a teacher is dealing with that particular issue in their practice. And a series of e-learning type activities to find out a little bit more about those competency gaps that my self-assessment suggested I had. So I worked through those.
Adrienne, it's Tracy. I just wanted to interrupt just for a minute because we had some really good questions come up in the question pane around how a trainer can utilize the data from these self-assessments, both on the digital literacy as well as the teaching with technologies, to be able to get an aggregate view of how the teachers in their schools are doing and where those gaps are. And the answer is the same for both of these curriculums. If you have IT Academy at your school, these curriculums are on IT Academy. It is a rich and robust learning management system that would enable you as an administrator to be able to track individual student learning as well as getting aggregate reporting. If you don't have IT Academy and you're utilizing the free content on the digital literacy site and from the Partners in Learning Network, what I would suggest is ask your teachers to give you their individual learning plans, and you can enter the gaps in a spreadsheet and then be able to get an aggregated view. I know it's not as automated, but it will end up with the same similar results. Thanks, Adrienne.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. No, that's a really valuable question to share with people. I think it's one model is to ask your participants to conduct these activities prior to the workshop and bring in or send you their results. But there is, as Tracy's outlined, there models whereby you can see that more holistically and interrogate that data more effectively. So it's a needs assessment. It will provide, again, a learning plan. They can work through their e-learning course that's being best suited to them based on the skills gaps or the competency gaps they have. And as before, in the pil1eorig.com toolkit, we've provided a series of resources. I'm sorry the screenshot's quite small, but I don't want to go live on my screen because we're running out of time. But if you look at the consolidation activities section of the toolkit for level 200, again, you'll see contextualized workshop materials that build on the competencies that are developed in the teaching with technology curriculum. So here, for example, this one is an 8-hour and 30-minute potential workshop, so maybe a day and a half of content to help them understand a bit more about how to use technology in teaching and learning. It uses things like Bing and PhotoSynth and Songsmith and Skype. And there's a series of downloadable and adaptable Word documents that you can use in your workshop. And there's 3 of these available in the level 200 consolidation activities. One focused around teaching and learning, one focused around technology for assessment, and one focused around technology to build communities of practice. So ready-made, usable, or adaptable workshop materials to support the competency gaps that might have been identified in the teaching with technology, self-assessment, and curriculum that they can use freely on the Partners in Learning Network. So building a really broad and valuable range of resources that you have at your fingertips through pil1eorig.com to help you understand the needs of your participant and then design an appropriate workshop building on the resources and the activities you already do successfully. And then also at the end of that, having some kind of evaluation through the pil1eorig.com evaluation resources as well to help you evaluate the impact of your workshop. So there's lots of really useful things there for you, and you'll be able to explore this shortly in about 13 minutes when we give you the login. So just to pick up briefly on what Tracy mentioned there, the question that was raised and that she answered for you there. Tracy, did you want to say something very quickly about the MCE that's coming on stream, or do you think you've covered that now?
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's going to be available later this spring, first to organizations and districts as part of volume license, and hopefully over time to individual educators who are interested.
Okay, great. So just to sort of close on the level 200 piece, there has been over 5,000 certifications that have been undertaken in pilots in Russia and Ireland. And you can see here some of the comments from school leaders and people who have been involved in that program about the value of that sort of self-assessment, personalized learning plan, access to e-content online, and then certification process as well. And you can see that it's been proved to be very highly demanded in Russia. And there was a lot of interest in Ireland about a globally recognized certification. And we very much hope that's something that you will use either in bit form or fully in your programs. And as Tracy outlined in the IT Academy, if you have access to that, then you can actually go right through to the full certification. The whole Teaching with Technology curriculum is available on the Partners Learning Network. I just wanted to run through what we would like to do next as a follow-up to this session and also in preparation for the session next week. So your homework, which will take you hopefully a maximum of 2 hours, is to do one of the following. And I want you to think about this from a perspective of teachers that you might train rather than yourself. So either take one of the assessments from the Digital Literacy curriculum or the Teaching with Technology self-assessment and maybe answer it a little bit like I did. You sort of, I got 87%. It's because I tried to put myself in the position of someone who perhaps wasn't as confident with technology as I am, although I'm not an expert by any means. So try and do that as if you were perhaps a teacher that you might work with, so you can see the kind of learning plan or suggested activities that they might be given. We'd also like you as well, please, to take one unit of study from either the Digital Literacy curriculum or the Teaching with Technology curriculum, just to help you to explore that better and to understand it a bit more. The best way to teach is to be a learner, so it'd be useful for you to go through that if you haven't done already. Please take the time to explore the level 100 and level 200 consolidation activities and educator tutorials that I briefly showed you. The login to do that is coming up shortly. And then also before the next webcast on Thursday of next week, which is on 21st Century Learning Design, there's a document in the download window of this live meeting, and also will be on the discussion thread on the Partners Learning Network for you to read in advance of that workshop, please, to enable that workshop to be more beneficial to you. There is also in that download window, the 3 little bits of white paper at the top of your screen, a document called Next Steps, which summarizes this slide that I've just talked through with you. And one final thing I'd like to ask you to do as well, if you would please, on our final webcast on May the 2nd, we hope that we might be able to start sharing some of your best practice. So we're looking for volunteers who would submit a presentation and offer 5 or 10 minutes of their time during that live meeting to actually present to the rest of us some of their best practice ideas and some of their strategies for how they might adapt or use some of this content to support their current workshop provision. So if you are somebody who would like to have the floor for 5 or 10 minutes on the May the 2nd webinar, rather than listening to me and Tracy for another hour and a half, so we can share some of that best practice and really get some real stories from you, that would be amazing and make for a very exciting May the 2nd webinar. So if you'd like to do that, please email pil1eorig@microsoft.com and offer your services, and we'll get back to you with what exactly we would like you to do. It'll be a 5 to 10 minute brief snapshot of what you do in your workshops and how you think you might be able to utilize the materials that we started to look at in these sessions. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. I hope you found the content of this session useful. Thank you to Tracy as well for her input. Tracy, anything to add?
No, thank you all for attending. And again, I just want to emphasize one thing, please, that even when you are badged as a PIL trainer, that portal is not for educators themselves. So it's a tool for you to use as trainers, but please do not share the username and password with your educators. And you can certainly share it with other trainers if they first apply to become a training provider.